Welcome to this special report on Rajya Sabha television with me, Frank Pereira. There is a perceived threat from the Chinese not just on the line of actual control and the international border, but also in the Indian Ocean region. This has been confirmed in a recent Defence Ministry report. The Chinese continue to spread their footprint in India's immediate neighbourhood, and India is not very pleased about it. On this special report, we'll try and find out what the battle of supremacy in the Indian Ocean really is. China is spreading its tentacles in India's immediate neighbourhood using diplomatic and military routes. The Red Dragon is trying to use its influence in Myanmar and Pakistan to try and get a foothold in the Indian Ocean region. India, on the other hand, has vowed to maintain security in a region that it has long dominated. The Defence Ministry, in its annual security analysis released in March, has made several alarming observations about China's dominance in the Indian Ocean and has also listed out countermeasures. China is extending its lines of access towards the Indian Ocean through Myanmar and Pakistan. Its footprint in India's immediate neighbourhood has been increasing as a result of its proactive diplomacy. China has helped build nuclear power plants in Pakistan, a Myanmar oil pipeline and a port in Sri Lanka in what it calls efforts to boost trade and economic ties. India remains wary of its military intentions, protesting two visits last year by Chinese submarines to Colombo, less than 200 miles from India's coastline, in waters carrying most of the world's oil trade. India remains conscious and watchful of the implication of China's increasing military profile in India's immediate and extended neighbourhood. India is taking necessary measures to develop the requisite capabilities to counter any adverse impact on its own security.
In recent years, the fact that China's posture on the line of actual control and the two intrusions that we've had when senior Chinese leaders were visiting India has created this anxiety about the land border. And I would say over the last 4 or 5 years, the steady presence of the Chinese Navy in the Indian Ocean, which initially started as an anti-piracy effort, but more recently we have seen Chinese nuclear submarines, for instance, coming into the Indian Ocean, has again stoked Indian anxiety.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi in March toured 3 Indian Ocean nations, Mauritius, Seychelles and Sri Lanka, and initiated several developmental projects with India's support, with the underlying purpose of countering Chinese influence in these islands.
Prime Minister Modi's visit is basically to consolidate India's position in the Indian Ocean region. This is probably the first time an Indian Prime Minister is visiting exclusively the Indian Ocean states during his visit a couple of weeks ago. This is not because of any external reasons, but it is purely to consolidate India's position in this region.
India in February increased its defence budget by 11% and approved the building of 6 nuclear-powered submarines and 7 new frigates.
We should not look for equivalence, but we should seek sufficiency in terms of how we relate to China and also use our geography in the most innovative and effective manner. And therefore, while monitoring China's capabilities very carefully, we have to really, I think, invest in those niches that would allow us to engage with China in the most effective manner.
Even with the new kit, India's navy will be dwarfed by China's fleet of about 49 frigates, 24 destroyers, 8 corvettes and about 60 submarines. As China's navy has modernized, its ships have ventured further afield, showing up earlier this year in ports in the UK, Germany and Greece.
Inevitable rise of China's comprehensive national power, and with it the rise of its military budget. Even this year, when the Chinese growth rates have shrunk to around 7% or slightly below, the Chinese military expenditure has increased again by over 10%. This is the cause for worry.
While the unresolved boundary dispute between India and China remains a key factor in the security calculus, the maritime front, where Beijing uses political, military and economic engagement for increasing its footprint in the Indian Ocean region, also needs to be watched keenly. So what makes these tiny little islands that important? Why are China and India jostling to get power in the region? Are these tiny islands just a few hundred or thousand nautical miles away from the Indian coast really that important? Let's find out. Dubbed as the center stage for the 21st century by American writer Robert Kaplan, the Indian Ocean has as many as 20 nations within its fold, of whom India stands geographically and potential-wise bang in the middle. Other capable countries like South Africa, Iran, Indonesia and Australia are also members of the Indian Ocean Rim family, but none of them has the centrality or attraction like India to assume regional leadership.
Islands become important if they provide support and sustenance to extra-regional powers. For instance, in the Indian Ocean, if there is a military presence of the Chinese, we don't care about Chinese merchant shipping in the Indian Ocean. They depend on the Indian Ocean for most of their trade. Indian Ocean and the two choke points, the Gulf of Hormuz and the Straits of Malacca, is where most of Chinese oil imports are routed from. That's not a cause for worry. What is a cause for worry if Chinese nuclear submarines begin to appear in our neighborhood and start anchoring in ports or islands in the Indian Ocean?
Beijing, with the help of economic and commercial initiatives, is mapping out a web of influence by increasing its presence in the Indian Ocean. There are two reasons for China's expansion into the Indian Ocean. First, some of these islands can prove to be China's answer to its Malacca dilemma, strengthening its energy security by reducing its dependence on the Strait of Malacca. Second, an increasing presence in the Indian Ocean is crucial to strengthening Beijing's role as a key actor in the emerging security architecture in the Indo-Pacific. There is no doubt that China aspires to be a maritime power. Beijing realizes that to be considered as a great power, it must have a role and stake beyond its region, beyond the Western Pacific and throughout the Indo-Pacific.
China has legitimate interests in the Indian Ocean region. Last year, China imported 340 million tons of oil, most of this passing through the Indian Ocean region, and about 80% of this passing through the Straits of Malacca. So, in that context, China is an interested party in the Indian Ocean. However, some eyebrows are raised in different parts in the Indian Ocean region when China had initiated what is called as the so-called string of pearls in 2005, by which they are planning to build some ports which are of dual use facilities, civilian as well as naval component involved in these.
Having attained a favorable status quo in the Western Pacific, China is now engaging with the island nations of the Indian Ocean through its investments and commercial initiatives. It is through its relationship and investments with these nations that Beijing aims to project itself as a resident power of the Indian Ocean, leading to a greater security role throughout the Indo-Pacific. However, unlike in the Western Pacific, the Indian Ocean is already home to many resident middle powers, wary of China's unilateral and hostile maritime policies. As a result, the possibility of increased Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean is leading to competition for geostrategic space, especially between India and China.
When we look at the entire maritime domain, for instance, China's current support to Pakistan to acquire submarines, that will also alter the tactical situation in a certain way. So I think for us, we need to engage with the Chinese and see how best to ensure that our interests are not adversely impacted.
The visit to Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the nation's maritime neighbours is reflective of India's desire to shore up its profile in the Indian Ocean region, a region long considered India's backyard but where New Delhi's influence has been eroding slowly but steadily. China has extended a quiet exchange to India's preeminence in South Asia through diplomatic and aid efforts directed at the small island nations dotting the Indian Ocean. While China, Japan, South Korea and Southeast Asian nations fight over specks of islands and reefs in the East and South China Sea, mainly because of undersea resources, islands in the Indian Ocean are emerging as a new focus for struggle between China and India.
What we need to do is to have a different level of relationship with each one of them, which had flagged in recent times, and to also ensure that there is no Chinese military presence in these islands. That's enough for us. It's not in competition with the Chinese, but really to build up our own equities with all these three countries that the visit was important.
China has been busy forging special ties with island nations on India's periphery, including Sri Lanka, Seychelles and Mauritius. China's attempt to gain a foothold in the Indian Ocean came into view in 2012 when reports emerged of an offer from Seychelles to China for a base to provide relief and resupply facilities to the Chinese Navy. Though promptly denied by Beijing, the offer underscored the changing balance of power in the region. India has traditionally been the main defense provider for Seychelles, providing armaments and training to its forces. The Indian Navy has also been making regular forays into the island nation's surrounding waters.
First one was actually in 1986. During that time, China sent 3 ships to Chittagong, to Colombo and to Karachi. In 1986, they decided that their logistics are extended.
What Prime Minister Modi did in Seychelles, Mauritius and Sri Lanka was to affirm that India is not only the historical lodestone of the Indian Ocean, but also the contemporary leader with the wherewithal to safeguard and develop the region. He served notice to China and the US, the two external superpowers prowling the Indian Ocean for influence, that India will not let its comparative advantages to go to waste. Whenever we speak of supremacy in the Indian Ocean region, terms such as Malacca Dilemma, String of Pearls and Iron Curtain always come up. What do these mean? We'll tell you on the other side of this short break. Welcome back, you're watching Rajya Sabha Television. So what do Malacca Dilemma, String of Pearls and Iron Curtain really mean? Are they just fancy terms given to far-fetched theories, or do they really mean something? Let's find out now. China is the world's largest exporter of finished goods and one of the largest importers. It is the biggest consumer of energy resources, and as its economy expands, its energy hunger only grows. Almost all of China's external trade is seaborne. In fact, shipping lanes are the lifeblood of China's trade with the world. It is in the light of this crucial fact that we have to look at China's Malacca Dilemma.
Every day, there are about 360 ships which pass through that region. In other words, cumulatively about 1 lakh ships pass through every year. And the projections are that the Straits of Malacca's shipping would increase to roughly about 1,50,000 in the next 10 years' time, which means if there is any blockade by human made or by natural disasters, then China rise will be problematic, because China is importing 80% of its oil or gas from this region. So this is called the Malacca Dilemma.
The Malacca Strait is a narrow channel of water that separates the Malaysian peninsula from the Indonesian island of Sumatra. In geographical terminology, a strait is a narrow channel of water that separates two land territories and connects two water bodies, just like the Park Strait between India and Sri Lanka. The Malacca Strait is one of the world's busiest shipping lanes, with over 1 lakh vessels passing through it every year. Located pretty close to this is Singapore. It is separated from the Malaysian peninsula by the Johor Strait. Singapore hosts a huge naval base belonging to the United States Navy. In fact, it is the US Navy that more or less controls the Malacca Strait and other water-based trade channels in this part of the world. It is this reality that is giving Beijing the jitters, because more than 70% of China's energy supplies move through the Malacca Strait. To avoid any further problems that may arise, Beijing is trying very hard to bolster its external defenses, not just to secure its economy but also the Communist Party's future. To resolve its Malacca Dilemma, Beijing has embarked on the ambitious String of Pearls strategy.
China is putting across pearls all across the Indian Ocean. These include Gwadar, these include Hambantota. And in November 2000, they also signed, Maldives defense minister signed an agreement for a submarine base in Marao, closer to Malé. However, due to Indian intervention in this area. The Maldives appear to have shut down that project with the Chinese on the submarine base. So this indicates that the pearls are coming up, and China intends to dominate this region through the string of pearls.
The string of pearls theory is a geopolitical theory regarding potential Chinese intentions in the Indian Ocean region. It refers to the network of Chinese military and commercial facilities and relationships along its sea lines of communication, which extend from the Chinese mainland to Port Sudan. The sea lines run through several major maritime choke points as well as other strategic maritime centers. The term as a geopolitical concept was first used in an internal United States Department of Defense report titled Energy Futures in Asia. The term has never been used by official Chinese government sources but is often used in the Indian media. Does India have an answer to the string of pearls strategy? Backed by a burgeoning economy, New Delhi too aspires to be hailed as a true blue water navy and will always deter the Chinese aspirations in the Indian Ocean region. India too is answering boldly by making its presence felt in the region with a strategy that has been termed by naval analyst Zhang Ming as Iron Curtain. The analyst proclaimed that the Andaman and Nicobar Islands could be used as a metal chain to block Chinese access to the Straits of Malacca.
I would just say that India should be investing in maritime diplomacy now in a far more sustained manner. It's not that the Indian security planners were unaware of the potential of the Indian Ocean vis-a-vis China. But there has been a very, I would say, stubborn pattern of either reluctance or the inability to comprehend what the maritime domain can offer.
India constantly exchanges dialogue with its neighbors to identify areas of investments in these countries. The tripartite technical expert group consisting of Indonesia, Malaysia and Singapore that administers the Malacca Straits has received substantial monetary aid from India, by the virtue of which the group has involved India's naval expertise to survey shipwrecks in the area that has left China fuming. Militarily too, India has expanded its presence in the Indian Ocean region by setting up listening posts in Seychelles, Mozambique, Madagascar and Mauritius. India has also gained berthing rights in Oman and Vietnam.
I think India would be received very positively if it brought something to the table through its military capability. So I think the short point is military diplomacy should receive the highest priority by the Modi government, and we should act quickly, both east, west and south.
The so-called China's string of pearls strategy is not yet advanced enough to put the Indian maritime security in question. However, someday or the other, India will have to find a suitable answer to the Chinese naval presence in its own backyard by it executing Iron Curtain or by implementing some other strategy.
I think at the moment, China will seek to maintain a steady naval presence in the Indian Ocean. They have maintained a 3-ship task force since early 2009. They also have some kind of relationship with some of the littoral countries for Chinese ships for R&R, as they call it, rest, recreation and repair. Now for India, I think we have to offer a maritime/naval alternative so that the smaller powers are not drawn towards what you might call as the Chinese sphere of influence.
Beijing too cannot afford its Achilles heel, that is its vulnerability to any disruption of crude oil flow, for much longer. Both nations therefore should look forward to draft a Sino-Indian maritime agreement. Till a time comes when India and China actually come up with a constructive maritime agreement, India needs to continue engaging with its immediate neighbors to ensure that security is safeguarded. The Prime Minister Narendra Modi has done just that. Let's take a look now at the relationship that India shares with its immediate maritime neighbors. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 5-day tour to Seychelles, Mauritius and Sri Lanka from March 10 to 14 infused fresh energy into India's mantle as the fulcrum of stability in the Indian Ocean. It signalled India's intent and capacity to ward off extra-regional challenges and emerge as a net security provider in strategically crucial sea lanes for global commerce and geopolitics.
Economic ties are a key pillar of our relationship. The progress we have made reflects our shared commitment to stronger economic cooperation. Our trade has seen impressive growth over the past decade. I'm aware of your concerns about trade with India. As I said in Delhi, we will try and address them.
Modi's message at all the three stops was to convey that India has the firepower and scientific prowess to support what he respectfully and affectionately dubbed as Chote Chote Tapu or small islands. Shedding the restraint of his predecessors, he boldly trumpeted India's military rise as beneficial for these tiny nations.
Is unique and special. It is founded on deep sense of mutual trust and confidence. It is marked by a spirit of respect and equality and enormous goodwill and warmth. It draws strength from our shared values of democracy and inclusiveness. It is nurtured by a common purpose, progress of our people, and peace and prosperity in the Indian Ocean region.
Small countries lying on the maritime edges of a great power can feel vulnerable when the latter flexes military muscle. For example, China's revolution in military affairs concept has frightened the wits out of its weaker neighbors in the East China Sea and South China Sea, where disputes over islands and mineral rights are escalating.
You're always dealing with countries that have a certain chip about dealing with the bigger power. They also know they can play the China card. So I think Indian diplomacy, it's not that they don't know, has to constantly internalize this need to be empathetic, and sometimes we perhaps have to be more patient than the other side. And I think one area which India needs to invest in is a continuous political dialogue. That I would say has not been happening.
Modi's proposal is a different approach altogether, wherein India will never mount any territorial claims over its Indian Ocean cohabitants. Rather, India would do everything to strengthen the defense sectors of these countries to ward off traditional challenges like powers from outside the region and non-traditional foes such as seafaring pirates and religious extremists.
We have now invested in what we call as the Mausam project. Now, related to that is the whole concept of Varuna as related to the oceans. And I think this is something that Prime Minister Vajpayee, during his tenure, had drawn attention to. At that time, we spoke about the Sagar Mala. Now, the whole logic was that we should use the maritime oceanic domain in a far more innovative and effective manner for India's security and commercial and trade interests.
The distinct Indian vision of a security umbrella in the Indian Ocean is reflected in two landmark agreements signed during Modi's visits to Seychelles and Mauritius, whereby New Delhi acquired infrastructure development rights in Assumption Island and Agalega Island, two vital listening posts. By operating and sharing surveillance systems on these islets, India is explicitly helping their host nations access the moves of unsavory elements in the region. Seychelles had previously offered refueling and docking facilities to Chinese warships involved in anti-piracy operations. Sri Lanka too had hosted Chinese submarines for resupplying en route to anti-piracy missions near the Horn of Africa. Aware of the expansionist mindset of the Chinese Navy and the ever-present US Navy, which has hunkered down in our backyard with heavy paraphernalia, Modi is pursuing robust arrangements for India to remain a preferred partner for the security of Indian Ocean neighbors.
There is, in January, there is a joint vision statement, strategic joint vision statement, in which Indian Ocean as well as South China Sea has been mentioned in the Obama-Modi joint statement. So the United States is already factored in as part of this joint statement, and actually both of them are working together on various issues. For example, we have more than a decade, I think 17 or 18 times we had Malabar exercises conducted between US and Indian navies. So there is the interoperability principle which has been evolved between the two sides.
Prime Minister Modi must be credited for skillfully playing the kinship card in Seychelles, Mauritius and Sri Lanka. By linking India to little Indias in the Indian Ocean, he has ensured that the diaspora in these countries will make a critical difference in shaping their government's strategic orientations. Neither China nor the US can tug at the hearts of people in nations such as Mauritius, the Maldives, Seychelles and Sri Lanka the way Mother India can. Prime Minister Modi has reminded the world that the Indian Ocean derives its spirit and character from India, which has come back with a bang into the water body named after it. That's all the time we have on this special report. We hope you enjoyed the show. See you again next time.